I want to start by recapping some of the things I wrote in the article on this weekend's shitstorm of political developments around the bourgeois elections. This past weekend, as I noted, the elections came down to voting for either a sexist predator or a drone predator. And I'm really glad that the paper staff decided to make that the headline. Actually, Sarah read that on Facebook, and someone from the anti-war movement described the two like that, and it's a great thing for us to promote. So, unfortunately, the workers, those of them who are still deciding to participate in the vote on November 8th and are still captive to the two parties of the bourgeoisie, have come down to either voting for this racist buffoon or a racist war hawk, right? Either a corrupt, misogynist idiot or a corrupt Wall Street lackey. Not much choices. Right, exactly. We have all been very sickened by Trump's comments that were caught on Access Hollywood Buzz, which amounted to vulgar, verbal, sexual assault and reflects the epitome of the objectification of women. We applaud the organization that this week organized a number of women of color and others who protested in front of Trump Towers against his tirade. I didn't see that making the mainstream news, but that was a really great thing that was carried out. Trump's words then and his demeanor now speak volumes about unbridled white, straight male privilege. We all know that it would have turned out entirely different had a black man been caught saying those words. That man's career would have been over, simple as that. The chances of Trump now winning this election are slim to none at all, although no one has a crystal ball. As Republicans denounced Trump over the weekend, as many of them declared, that's it, this is the last straw, one has to ask the questions, why now? Why this? Why did it take this ultra-sexist tirade for them to say enough? Why not be outraged as Trump's painting Mexican migrants, all of them, as criminals and rapists? Or what about his constant vilification of Muslims, or his vilification of people who are physically challenged? Why not be outraged over his continued, ongoing lies about the Central Park Five? Indeed, why circle the wagons regarding women? Could it be the Republicans' own misogyny and ideas of patriarchy? Could it be that white women who are married to white men are the line in the sand, while oppressed people are disposable and are to be reminded of their place? How insulting it was to hear male after male, Republican and Democrat alike, talk about how offensive Trump was to our women. Our daughters, our wives, our mothers should not be talked about the way Trump talked about women, they said. Indeed. But women are not the ours of anybody, as the women's movement must remind them. Women are not property to be reviled, nor are they property to be cherished. They are not property at all. And we are more than daughters, wives, or mothers. We are not defined by our relation to men. We are doctors, teachers, lawyers, bus drivers, laborers, and so on. And some of us are warriors, ready to do anything we can to crush this system. It was only after a day or two did the news outlets start having more women panelists speaking to this odious behavior. Without a doubt, sexism and misogyny are alive and well in this country. The incident that I referred to in my article about Starbucks actually happened to me a couple of weeks ago when I was sick and needed to go get some medicine. I ran an errand, I was coughing, so I decided to go to Starbucks and sit down and have a cup of coffee or some tea. And sure enough, some man was having some sort of altercation with the worker and didn't like what happened and called her the C word right then and there. And I was so mad at myself because I wanted to say something, but I was coughing and sick, and I'm like, what if he throws the coffee at me? But this is what women have to live with. We have to hear this. And I wanted to also mention this, that when we were in Charlotte for the demonstration there a couple of weeks ago, one of the women comrades that was attending the demonstration, a woman, I'm not going to say her name because I didn't ask her permission, but she's a woman of my age who has been in the party for a long time, and she had some sort of altercation during the demonstration where this white male took the banner from her under the pretext that he was trying to help her carry the banner, but it was very awkward and questionable because he was assuming that she couldn't carry it. She didn't ask for help, so it was kind of weird. And she thought that maybe he was a cop or something like that. And finally she got somebody else to take the banner away from him so that he wouldn't be seen taking pictures holding the banner. And then so they come down to the demonstration, and we're at the end of the demonstration, and she's telling me about what happened, and lo and behold, the man who took the banner from her came up to try to kiss her. Just like that, try to kiss her. And thank goodness that her reflexes were great. And she says, "You stop, you can't kiss me." And he said, "We just marched together for half an hour." And he comes to come and hug her. And she's just like, "You cannot do that with me." And she just like let him have it. And it was important for us to talk about this and when we were going over the demonstrations in Charlotte, because this is the kind of things that happen to women political people all the time. You know, when y'all are so excited about May Day, behind the scenes, what some of the women are going through with some of the male activists, and we love them dearly. They are no Trumps. You know, they are not Trumps at all. But just, you know, it's still hard. It's still hard. You know, some of the insensitivities that women and queer women in particular and queer people face. And that's why I was, if you have a chance to hear Michelle Obama today. Now, we know that Michelle Obama and the Obamas are part and parcel of capitalist ideology, and they're part of the system and so forth. But she gave a very eloquent and moving speech about sexism that is worth for every man to listen to, even if we're not tied to them ideologically, because she spoke to the heart about what it's like to be a woman in this society, you know. And even though there's been great progress, and there has been great progress, I mean, I know, for example, when we talk, when men that are in their 30s and they're not working and they're taking care of their children instead, and their spouses or partners are working and they're the child taker, I know that every time that I remark to them that is so cool, they think it's like nothing, you know, like it's common. But when we were growing up, for men to stay at home and take care of children, that was not common at all. And so, you know, there's been a lot of progress, and we have to talk about that. Now, I didn't get a chance to go into this in my current article, so I need to make this point tonight. The opposition against Hillary Clinton, is not just from the left. Everything, you know, it's unfortunate that the Trump debacle actually takes attention away from how bad Clinton is sometimes. You know, the Clinton initiative, her alignment with the forces that dismantle welfare, that led to mass incarceration, her role in the wars in Libya and Haiti and Honduras. She has the blood of these people on her hands for sure, and we've got to remember and talk about these things. And that anger and pinpointing her role is, of course, correct and righteous. And that's very important for us to continue to do, and we need to actually do it more, because you can get so caught up with how terrible Trump is. But it would be wrong for us not to also point out the hatred against Clinton that is thoroughly tainted with misogyny and the hatred against her from the right, which is, kind of hard, but we have to talk about it. She has been targeted from day one by the right wing, and especially the extreme sexist right wing, for being a strong political woman. They crusaded against her in the 80s for not taking her husband's name. In the early days, she insisted on being Hillary Rodham, and the right wing attacked her, and she eventually caved in on that in Arkansas. No politician has been talked about or written about how she dresses, her demeanor. Is she shrill? All the words that are only and criticisms that are only applied to women are applied against her, and no male politician has had to endure what she's had to endure. And so we just want to point that out, that misogyny even at that level is nothing to be defended. And we, of course, will never defend her program, but it would be wrong to point out the extreme sexism that she's had to bear. Some of the things that I viewed on the news this week were indeed very sickening, especially the women who were defending Trump. The women, of course, there were both wealthy and working class. The wealthy women that were sitting around having tea, all white, were saying, well, Miss Universe shouldn't have gained weight. That's her job, to look beautiful. She should be accused. Or the working class woman who told Pence at some rally that if Hillary Clinton gets elected, that there needed to be a revolution, and it really scared them about this. Or the white working class woman who brought her daughter to a Trump rally, and the journalist is asking her, well, do you really want this as an example for your daughter to see? Oh, all men talk like that. No, not all men talk like that. And a politician, even a bourgeois politician, should be held to higher standards, right? That's what many of the women are trying to point out. And you are reminded that how backward our class can be, in the sense that some of them are from the working class, and how desperately we need a mass movement to raise consciousness on these issues and wash away the ideas of the bourgeoisie. So I want to spend a few minutes talking, reading from this article that I read today. I don't know if Carmen's had a chance to read this, but there was this article in the Times today titled "Donald Trump's Toxic Masculinity," and I'm going to take a few minutes to read from it. And this is starting right now. Growing up in a factory family in small-town Indiana, and it's written by a man. I don't know if I said that. Growing up in a factory family in small-town Indiana, I led an uncertain life with only a few constants: fear of losing it all, frustration with a world out of our control, and the ever-present need to be a man. To be a man was to maintain the appearance of toughness, to never let on that you were weak or in pain. It was a command I heard repeatedly at home and around town. My stepdad was fond of saying, boys don't cry. Crying's for women. One of my high school football coaches gave injured players this choice: you are a football player, or are you a little girl? The Donald J. Trump we heard last week on tape is nothing new to me, he writes. His penchant for dividing the world into losers and winners, his lack of empathy for anyone but himself, it all reminds me of the sense I had, even as a boy, of a system of privilege that has ailed this country since its beginnings, but now seems to be and sees itself fading away. Taking refuge in traditional masculinity is a coping mechanism that works only so much as it deadens a man and his emotions. Fear precipitates sexist chatter, a fear of pain, a fear of mortality, a fear of rejection, and most of all, a fear of inadequacy. They're the fears of a child, and most men outgrow them, but for various reasons, not all do. Their masculinity, already a coping mechanism, becomes toxic. The next thing I think, and this is me saying this, the next thing that he writes about is especially important. Quote, "The real world, complicated foreign policy questions, confusing social change, economic dislocation is precisely what toxic masculinity is trying to avoid. Though such masculinity might temporarily shelter men from the pressures of their daily lives, inevitably it robs them of their lives. Disturbing trends show that men, especially the white men who make up a majority of Trump's base, are suffering greatly for their posturing. From 2009 to 2014, while mortality rates fell for all other Americans, and that's his word, not ours, ranging from ages 22 to 56, they rose for middle-aged whites, with most of the fatalities coming from what experts are calling despair deaths, including drug overdoses, alcohol-related liver disease, and suicide. All consequences of unhealthy coping mechanisms. More and more men are also suffering and dying from heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. The disease that claimed my father, a man who was so concerned with upholding his masculinity that he refused to see a doctor for decades until it was too late. Our economy has left many of these men behind. White men, statistics show, have borne some of the worst of the effects of globalism and the Great Recession, and still suffer from the largest shortfall of jobs. That's why it's no surprise to see Trump's core supporters not only cling to him after the tape came out, but even tighten their grip, doubling down with misogynistic T-shirts and chants at rallies. I can still remember as a child listening to the same man who told me to leave the crying to the girls as he sobbed alone in his room. My stepfather was a truck driver, and after he left his rig and clocked out of his shift, he would often lock himself in his bedroom. I could hear him, though, and I could hear when my mother, a woman he derided and belittled as being weak, came to him and did the heavy lifting for them both. End of quote. I think that's really important. And I think it's important, we have written about capitalism at a dead end. And this is a sociological, emotional, real-life, vivid example of what capitalism at a dead end has done to a sector of the working class. And you add to that what we can say about the lives of black men. Imagine the physical and emotional terror that every single black man goes through every day in the society, and women too. And especially every time that a police stops you. A psychologist wrote about the physical deterioration that's going on every time that a police stops a black man, that they immediately have a physical reaction of fight or flight, that your body basically goes into that fight or flight. And so every time that a cop stops you and you're walking back to get your ID, or you're grabbing your, each person that goes through that experience must have this incredible, traumatic, irrational response, which is really extremely telling of capitalism right now. So I bring this up because what is happening that thousands are rallying, both women and men, to Trump, even after his sexist spew. It is important to understand this phenomenon around Trump, because even if he loses the election, his supporters, the racist, sexist, Islamophobic, anti-immigrant base that he has galvanized, will not disappear. They will not crawl back into the gutter. Now, we don't know what this crisis means. I mean, we don't even know if perhaps, you know, there's things in the wind that are indicating that there might even be efforts to jail Trump for some of his acts, and that might happen. And if they do jail him, or if they're able to push him back, then this galvanized right-wing force that he has opened up, you know, will not have a leader. But if he's not jailed, you know, we know that despite who wins on November the 8th, and assuming that Clinton wins and not him, that they're not going to go away at all, and that we will have to counter this. Because in addition to capitalism at a dead end being a factor for some of the working class men that are behind Trump, obviously it's a different story for the few ruling class rich elements that support him. Behind this is, of course, even though Trump is very free and much freer to talk sexist and much freer to attack women and all the rest. At one of the rallies this week, there was a sign that had "Women for Trump," and he was kissing the sign. And it was like, such a pig. He's such a pig. But behind Trump, the things that he continues to say about the Central Park Five is his way of knowing that he can't use the N-word. But behind Trump is the fact that they cannot reconcile themselves to the fact that the United States had the first black president. That is one of the opening shots that has riled up the racist right wing in this country. That and the fact that immigrants and others are turning this country into a brown country is something that they just cannot reconcile themselves to. And another important thing is that it's obvious that the Republican Party is imploding, is falling apart. Who would have known that the rise of Donald Trump would make the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, look like a thoughtful statesman, when in fact he is a Tea Party Republican? I mean, who would have ever thought? But nonetheless, the Republicans are imploding. We don't know, how they'll regroup or what's going to happen after the elections, how they're going to get it together. But clearly, the bourgeoisie that is behind the Republican Party has lost the Republican Party, and how they're going to get it together remains to be seen. Now, one of the things that happened this week, too, was the revealing of another level of WikiLeaks that came out at the same time, I think almost the same day as the Access Hollywood bus scandal. Now, there are those who say, and it sounds completely possible, that the Access Hollywood bus video was released from the Clinton team, because they knew that Assange was going to release these WikiLeaks. And it certainly derailed the issue. Now, everything that I've heard on the news about the WikiLeaks emails haven't been that big a deal. I mean, I don't know, maybe if others have read other things, but they said something about Catholics. They said Latinos were needy. I mean, compared to Trump, it's like really nothing. But it is very interesting, and it's something that we have to explore more. I called Comrade Fred today, and as we all know, he got serious health issues, and is not able to come to meetings very much. I'm sure we'll see him at the party conference, and we all, of course, missed him very much. But I called to ask him, if he had a couple of minutes to talk about all of this, and he was pointing all this out. How the Republicans have lost control of the the bourgeoisie has lost control of the Republican Party, but that this is a crisis that they made with, decades and decades of Reaganism and the dismantling of welfare and all the rest. And that Trump may actually think that he can get more votes by hammering out against Clinton, talking about Bill. And there was also this rumor that in one of his Twitter, or somebody's Twitter from the Trump team, said that maybe they should repeal the 19th Amendment, which gives women the right to vote, because all men, I mean, it was a hashtag, repeal the, because women are not going to vote for Trump in record numbers. So some right-wing misogynist pig, came out with that. And so, if to feed the fodder of the hatred of Clinton may very much be his strategy, because, and obviously a lot of people are already turned off to that. There's a lot of people who, some are saying that Trump is so bad that even if we can't stand Clinton, and even though we know about her anti-war positions and her pro-war positions and so forth, that Clinton would still be better than Trump. That, of course, is not our view. Shoring up Clinton, giving her more votes, is actually not helpful at all. And in fact, it would add to the crisis if there was massive noncompliance or massive apathy, and large numbers of people, black, brown, and white, didn't vote on November the 8th. That would be another sign of the political crisis that both parties are having, that the ruling class is having. And of course, we're going to be out there on November 8th talking about Morehead Lily and the struggle and so forth and so on. And we have to remember, I want to make sure that comrades read the article that I quote about the many in the Sanders, not all of them, but many in the Sanders movement, who are unfortunately, really pushing to vote for Clinton because Trump is so bad, and how that is not a solution at all, and how important it is. So I want to just end also by saying that the next debate is next Wednesday, I believe. Right? Is that right? And that the comrades working on the campaign are putting together a webinar that Monica and Lamont will have immediately after the debate. It's very important, and we have to sort of sift it all out. We should remember that after the first debate, when WikiLeaks let out some emails then, and right away the Democratic Party said that it was the Russians who were revealing and, hacking and all of that. Well, we don't know if that's the case, right? We don't know if that's the case. But Obama did say that the Russians did do it. So it gave it credence and it gave it legitimacy. And we have one of the dangers of the coming period is the noises that the Clinton administration and the Democratic Party is making for a future administration, a war against Russia. That's something we're going to have to deal with right away, right? And Russia, Putin is no Fidel, to say the least, right? And who the hell knows, what deals they're making with WikiLeaks and Trump. But there seems to be some sort of alliance, right? Now, what John said about how some of the movements or entities abroad are hoping that Trump gets in, well, this is really, really wrong. This is really wrong that that is not a class perspective. That is not a revolutionary perspective. That is not a perspective of solidarity with the workers and oppressed of the United States, which should be the fundamental guide that they should have. So if Assange is in fact making some sort of deals with Trump under the guise that he thinks that if he helps him win, that maybe he can get some, forgiveness or something, or some deals, that shows that they don't have any politics, that they're just, or that they're just guided by some exposing the U.S. government with no revolutionary perspective. And this is something we got to take on, right? Now, the point that Shelley made about being, and that I raised it also about Clinton and being careful about if she's elected, and chances are that she will be elected, it's going to be a very difficult administration, the first woman president, right, after the first black president. And their attacks, their intervention abroad, the possibility that there being some really horrible aggression against the former Soviet Union, all of these things are dangerous, but how we counter has to be within the confines of not falling into sexism, and that's very important. I also wanted to say, you know, it's so true that there seems to be a new awareness and a new women's movement, and it has been sorely lacking. I remember all the comments who will remember when Bernard Tiller, one of the abortion doctors, was killed, was assassinated. George Tiller. And how tragic that he was killed, and one of the a handful of abortion doctors that still exist. And I think that's still the case. I mean, the women comments that know more on that issue can say that, but there's very few people who are being trained to give abortions anymore, or that are doctors are willing to learn that. And then they're assassinated and their killers go free, and there isn't a strong women's movement to counter that. We desperately need a revival of a working class movement, and we certainly hope that what happened this week will give fuel to a working class revolutionary women's movement that we want to help organize and support. And it is going to be such a struggle, because women's oppression is the oldest oppression.